17 years on, the Honda S2000 remains a real cult favourite. Underneath that sleek, pointy body shell are all the ingredients you'll need to make one of the finest sports cars ever, with a ballistic engine, perfect weight balance and rear-wheel drive. But the car's schizophrenic personality and the fact that its real thrills were hard-won and only properly arrived in brief moments means that it remains one of the most dichotomous, capricious but utterly brilliant cars of recent years. Often referred to as an MX-5 for adults, the S2000 is one of the most classic examples of always the bridesmaid, but never the bride. Affordable, good-looking and with an open-topped old-school demeanour, it should have been an instant runaway success, but it was often overlooked in favour of cars which were seen to be better all-round packages like the BMW Z4 and the Porsche Boxster. First unveiled in the 1995 Tokyo Motor Show as a concept car, Honda eventually put it into full production in 1999 as a 50th birthday present to itself, and it lasted for a full 10 years with more than 100,000 built. Designated S2000 for its 2-litre engine, its name was also a tip of the hat to the Honda sports cars of the 60s, a decade during which the Japanese company built the gorgeous S500, S600 and S800 Roadsters. It really is a pretty thing too, and if you're a petrol head of a certain disposition, it's likely to be a car that you're very familiar with as well. Whether it's from Gran Turismo, from the Fast and the Furious, or maybe you're just a fan of purebred sports cars, the S2000 is, well, it's kind of an icon. A big part of it is its simplicity as well. It sticks very closely to that classic sports car formula. Engine in the front, power to the rear, snappy manual gearbox, and absolutely no whiff of a turbocharger anywhere. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, so they say, and that's pretty much exactly what Honda did, save for a few tweaks to the early models which were notorious for their twitchy handling in the wrong hands. Later versions got things like stability and traction control, but thanks to Honda's unwillingness to fettle, the S2000 remained more or less the same throughout its entire production run. But like the Civic Type R and the original NSX, it wasn't about the equipment. This was a car that was defined by its engine, a naturally aspirated 2-litre dual overhead cam VTEC, which produces 237 brake horsepower and 207 Nm of torque, and which revs freely all the way to 9,000 RPM. It's hard to overstate just how much of a marvel this little engine is. All alloy and infused with fibre reinforced parts, it was built using all of Honda's racing knowledge and even won Engine of the Year 4 years on the bounce. Given that the S2000 weighs a trim 1,200 kilograms, it can scamper from 0 to 62 miles per hour in a shade over 6 seconds before zooming all the way on to 150 miles per hour. However, as anybody who has ever driven one will know, the best of its performance isn't exactly forthcoming. For a start, it's got less torque than an old Ford Granada from the early 1980s or a modern Golf Blue Motion, and peak torque doesn't kick in until a staggeringly high 7,500 RPM. In fact, I'm willing to bet that many of you sitting watching this now will never even have been as high as 6,000 RPM after the advent of modern turbo diesels. Later versions like this Edition 100 got a couple of tweaks to try and straighten out the power delivery, but the revs still don't build all that quickly and lacks the readiness of something like a peppy little MX-5. In fact, below 6,000 RPM, sometimes it hardly even feels like a sports car at all, but keep your foot planted to the ground and wait. As the dial passes 6, the cam profile changes and all bloody hell breaks loose. It's like the power of 10,000 VTEC kicked in, yo memes, as the car violently screams towards the red line. This car is practically bipolar in how quickly it changes from slightly underwhelming to utterly rabid. For a sports car, it's actually quite hard to get the absolute best performance out of the S2000, but then that just makes it all the more rewarding whenever you do. It's a tough job trying to stay on top of it and trying to keep the engine in that high sweet spot, but once you get it, you get it. Granted, it can be notoriously wayward on the limit. Traction can come and go in the snap of the fingers, and the back end never really wants to step out, but when it does, it's all or nothing.
Still, the sheer tactility of this car is amazing. Everything vibrates in harmony. Sure, the steering's a little bit woollier than you might expect, and the pedals have gone a little bit soft with age, but you can feel everything from the road communicated up through your legs, through your spine into your hands, and it even sort of vibrates your cheeks a little bit. I love its old school attitude, and although this car in particular is only about 7 or so years old, I love the retro-tastic dials, and I even quite like the slightly plasticky, slightly cramped interior. Call me a sucker for pain, this thing is highly strung, it's temperamental and it's fidgety, and I just can't get enough of it.
Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and for the S2000 that time came in 2009. In the wake of the global financial crisis, Honda immediately scrapped its performance cars, and has struggled to recoup its mojo ever since. Still, in recent years, and with the return of the Civic Type R and now the NSX, there's hope. Will we soon be hearing the pitter-patter of tiny Roadster wheels as a successor to this scrappy little machine makes an appearance? Well, we wouldn't rule it out.
But with prices starting from just £6,000 used, the original is still a seriously tempting sports car. It's intense, it's hard work, and I'll be honest, whenever you first start to drive it, it can be a little frustrating. It's not like a modern turbo car where any Tom, Dick or Harry can just get in, switch on and blast off.
You need time to learn how to drive this car, how it works and what its temperament's like. But if you're going to buy one, what could be more perfect than something which only reveals facets of its character over time, and which becomes better the more you drive it?
So, is it worth it? Hell yeah, it is.